you guys. Welcome back to another episode of Taryn Swears. One that this is going to be super exciting. I get really excited about being able to bring my friends on that are willing to take time out of their busy lives. And this one in particular, like, probably has a nuttier schedule than I do because we tried to nail this down probably for a couple of months, but it's finally here, and you guys are gonna love her. She's a fellow transplant to the Idaho area, and I'm gonna let you share I'm gonna let her share her story on the evolution of getting here and what it all meant and how we all became friends. But I'm excited for you guys to meet Brianna Battles. She's a CEO and founder of Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism, which you guys are probably like, it's pretty straightforward, but the elaboration of it and what she does with this programming is pretty badass. So if you guys don't know what it is or don't follow Brianna yet, because she's kind of like a celebrity. I mean, I knew about you before I met you, right?
That's funny. I don't
Isn't
know.
that funny? You know what? It really is. So I had heard of you. I swear I told you this. Maybe I didn't because I was like, I don't want to be that weird girl. But one of my girlfriends that I met through a coaching program, she took your certification, Christine Zifra, and she's like, oh my God, I think you live near Briana. I was like, I don't know where she lives. She's like, she lives in Eagle and like somewhere in that area. And I was like, oh, small town. And then we met at the pool, and Melissa's like, you got to meet my friend Bree. And this is what she does. And I was like, holy shit. I literally just heard about you like days ago. And maybe I
That's
said that
so
in my
funny.
head so I didn't sound like a total creeper. Anyways, thank you for
Not
coming
creepy. It
on.
always helps me, like it helps me when I'm like, okay, I don't even have to explain it. I don't explain what I do. You already know. Good.
And you know what? People will know exactly what you do and who you are and your personality and why it's so captivating. So I'm excited for people to get to know you. But we had such a unique introduction because, and if you guys haven't listened, you should. We have a two-part series actually hosted on Brianna's podcast, which the name of your podcast is
The Practice Brave podcast.
So go take a listen on any of your platforms. We had a two-part series that our group of friends that we all came together because of one person, Melissa, Melissa Reese is a transplant from Washington area as I was. And we talk about how we all came together, but really Melissa was kind of the root of it. And so that's how Bree and I got introduced to each other, and we connected because we all are similarly aligned with what we do for our careers and our passion for what we do. So, maybe share a little bit if people haven't heard like how you kind of got here, what brought you here. And then I'd love for you to be able to kind of speak to how you landed and what you do.
Yeah. So we moved to Idaho about a year and a half ago from Southern California. And honestly, our family was just in need of a fresh start from just across the board in every single way. We were looking for a fresh start, and it's really hard to describe, but I just felt a pull. We had visited Idaho a couple years prior to go to a friend's wedding, and there was just always something special about this area in the Treasure Valley that we felt connected to, and had always joked about my husband like lateraling out here and just what the quality of life could be like for our kids. And then life just got really lifey, and we decided
I always
the
love your terminology.
it just did, like,
It makes
we were in
sense.
like a really rough season, and felt like the best way forward was an opportunity to start over, to have a new opportunity, new environment, new people, new place, just everything. And it was a really good reset. And my kids are they're young, and we felt like if we are going to do this, we need to do it now. And it's, it was an opportunity to go. And then when we were kind of talking about the idea, my mom, who was living in Northern Nevada at the time, said, well, gosh, if you guys moved to Idaho, we would go there, because they had retired and moved out of California. And I hated it. I hated that I was doing life removed from my mom, who was really close with my kids, and we really were close. And so I felt like if there was an opportunity to be together, it was too good of one to pass up, even though it felt so complicated and so fast. And it was just intimidating to start over in your 30s, to start over in a lot of different ways. We didn't know a lot of people out here. We knew a couple, but again, it just felt like every door was opening, and I kept waiting for a sign of like, this isn't the right idea. And
Mhm.
yet everything just kept pushing us here, and things fell into place. They just fell into place in ways that um, it just felt like God and the universe was affirming over and over and over again. So we've been really happy here. It's been exactly what we hoped it would be. And it is a lot to get used to with the weather, the weather
Oh
change.
my God.
I'm definitely adjusting to that, but overall trying to just keep like a really healthy perspective on acclimating and our ability to be like resilient and start over, and that it's an opportunity and it's a big blessing.
It really is. And on the weather front, that in a couple of months we will all be bitching because we will be dying a slow death. Although
No,
you're
I
from
said
Southern California, you
I will
won't.
never bitch about the heat, Karen. I said that. I was like,
You
now that,
did.
yeah,
You did.
I
That's
won't bitch
fair.
about it. No, I'll be grateful. I will be grateful for sun and bathing
You
season.
will.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just like to bitch just to kind of make a statement, but I really
yeah,
don't mean it, right? But
yeah.
a long stretch of triple digits, kind of
A little
were
toasty.
a little
Yeah,
toasty, but that's what the pools are for. But anyway, speaking of the pools and the social element of it and moving to a new state, I mean, I moved around a lot, and that's really I feel like what's kind of built my character young and learning how to kind of adapt in situations. And, you know, you've said in our podcast series that we did as our group, just like I like to observe, and I'm not one, like, I will be I have tendencies to be outgoing, but it has to be the right environment. However, walking into a completely new environment, I'm like, I'm going to observe and see what's going on with these people and the vibe there. How would you say being in your 30s and trying to meet other moms, and like how's that kind of been for you? Like what's been your experience coming to a whole new state?
yeah. I
Friends.
felt like I'd had the same friends for 10 to 20 years. And so I never was in a position in my adult life to like have to make friends or find a social circle because I had had one. But also, by the time you're in your 30s, you've also experienced like loss and changes in dynamic with friend groups and people. And so you come into it, at least for me, I came into it a little bit guarded with like wanting to guard my expectations and not really knowing exactly how to make friends. I knew that getting involved in my community was going to be really important for my mental health, and also just for like from business, and also just immersing, like getting immersed here and embracing it. So I knew that was really important to me, but the actual doing of it was hard. So I started with getting involved with jiu-jitsu and my whole family doing that, so that that could be a social element for all of us. And that was one aspect of it. But I've always struggled with mom friends, just like, I don't know, I it wasn't really, I liked meeting people and then later discovering that like we had motherhood in common instead of motherhood being the thing that
Yeah.
connected us. There was nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's just that hasn't always been like a really natural thing for me. It's almost like I've connected with them through something else, and then like mom life just became a complementary aspect. I also had a lot of friends that weren't moms yet in California. So um, coming here, it was really nice that Melissa she had gone through my certification. So she already knew a lot about me. I didn't know who she was, but the fact that she had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm also moving here." And then she ended up moving really close to my house. And she's so outgoing that I was like, okay, this is nice. We have this thing in common. I don't have to explain myself to her.
Hmm.
She knows what I'm about. And it just like helped me drop a lot of my um just like some of the my insecurities and my barriers or whatever that I felt awkward like making friends. It made it a lot easier because those walls were already broken down with her. And then she just introduced me to a lot of other people, and it's like that similar vibe of human that I knew that I could like connect with. And still really hard though, because like I can be really extroverted, but again, moving to a new state, it's almost like you have to like put your feelers out there and like, how do I fit in here? Or do I not fit in here? And just also wanting to protect my energy because I don't have an abundance of time. I'm like a really busy human, and I can't have like high maintenance friendships and relationships because that can be really exhausting. So I knew that I needed to connect with people who were open and emotionally intelligent and supportive of all of me, not just mom life, not just one side of life, but just could like support the whole human. And I just really wanted to be selective about who I was giving energy to and receiving energy from. And I just feel really grateful that, you and I connected, that Melissa, Kristen, Caitlin, like all of us have cultivated this small group of friends that can really show up for each other in meaningful ways that I did not think that that was really possible to find as fast as I found it here.
I've said time and time again to almost everyone that I've probably encountered here, as an adult, this has been the easiest way to get into a community and just not have to be guarded with every conversation that you have. Obviously, we've got boundaries and protective measures that just are part of our innate human abilities, but just everybody that, and I feel like maybe this is just because this is the evolution of our society now, and most people that are moving into new environments, and as you get older, you kind of cut the bullshit out. Like you can cut through the little, roughly shit, like I don't need to know any of the roughly shit. And when, I want you to know some of my roughly shit because, we've gotten to that point, then it's like open and it's available, but it's not like the precursor, and there's no fronts that need to be put on anymore. And again, maybe that's our age. You in your 30s, I'm in my 40s. Like none of us have time to, fake a friendship because it's so exhausting, right? And we dealt with that with the, personally, years of, feeling like I've had to force friendships to keep them because I've had them for so long, or, recognizing when it was time to maybe just let go and move on because our lives have changed, and that's okay. So we really expanded on this actually on those 2 episodes. So you guys go listen to Brianna's podcast, Practice Brave, right? Yep. Podcast. And there's 2 episodes on there that we did. And it was such a fun experience, but they're really heartfelt conversations that we had. A lot of us got raw and really real to the process and our struggles, because we all had a different perspective on it and what we came for. And so hopefully it'll bring you guys some light, especially if you're thinking about moving or you are in a new town or state or city and unsettled. Hopefully it'll make you feel like, okay, they went through it too. But I did there's history to Practice Brave. And I was wondering if you could tell us what that came from and what its meaning is.
Sure. Practice Brave has been like a sentiment connected to my business, but it was kind of a self-development, I guess, like phrase that I kept to myself for a really long time. After my first son was born, it was like an evolution of just like a major identity shift for me. Being an athlete, being a coach, not feeling like I just got rocked by the entire experience. My ego got rocked, my lifestyle, my training, my body, my brain, everything felt like it just got rocked during that season of life. And to the point where I wasn't even sure if I wanted to have another baby again, because everything had just been so hard with my delivery and my postpartum recovery, and just how many different transitions occurred after I had him, ultimately, which started a great and successful business for me. So it ended up being very positive. But when it came time to think about having a second baby, I knew that like I just needed some words to like reflect on, which wasn't about like having a certain outcome, but it was about like working towards the choice that will hopefully set us down the path of whatever the next right thing is. And for me, it wasn't about being brave, but it was about the ability to at least practice efforts that worked towards becoming brave. And so I just sort of shortened that sentiment to Practice Brave. And that I started talking about that a lot during my second pregnancy. And again, it was really attached to my business and my brand. So, and it was a sentiment that I think a lot of people can connect with. And now it's just grown in a lot of different ways to complement the work I do and the variety of like heart projects and entrepreneurial visions I have. But all of it does come down to more of like a lifestyle, and it's just, a lifestyle of being able to practice brave. And that's not practicing perfection. That's not getting it right. That's still making a lot of mistakes, but it's knowing how to like show up and keep showing up. And that's a sentiment that is important to me in business, important to me for self-development, and an important theme that I'm raising my family to believe as well.
Oh, I love that. I actually told my 9-year-old about that whole theme because she gets really insecure about being in environments, especially like birthday parties when you walk in and there's so much going on and you're so overwhelmed, but like practicing being brave, walking into it with confidence.
Mm.
And I actually brought it up 2 days ago because she's got a presentation tomorrow that she's got to do in front of her class. And I was like, here's your opportunity to be practice being brave. And so I refer to that phrase a lot thanks to you. So I love that that's been just kind of instituted in your lifestyle just naturally. But I wanted to bring up about what you do in your certifications because your history with athleticism and how now, as a mother and a former athlete yourself, me being a former athlete and competitor, I mean, we both had that competitive drive. I'd love for you to kind of talk about the evolution of your personal like workout regimen and what it, when you kind of identified things needed to shift, obviously becoming a parent and having all the things adjust and change physically, but also your training schedule got altered and now kind of getting back into that competitive state with jiu-jitsu. I'd love for you to kind of explain what that means and how that looks for you, at this stage in your life.
Yeah, like a big component of my business is it's not like pregnancy and postpartum. I feel like pregnancy and postpartum, though, are opportunities to really identify who you are, what you want, and what you want long term. Like to be a catalyst for what I call a lifetime of athleticism, the ability to pursue a lifetime of athleticism. And I think a lot of us are used to saying, well, like I was an athlete, I was an athlete in high school, or I was an athlete in college, but like that somehow just stops, even though a lot of us, yourself included, are still training. Like we're still doing things that are athletic, but it's that we have been told to believe that identity dies when we become a mom. That's not true. Like athleticism does not end when motherhood begins. And I think there's a really big opportunity there to explore that just because it's different doesn't have to be a bad thing. We can leverage it through different seasons in our life. I teach that in my coaching certification because I think that's a huge part of working with pregnant and postpartum athletes is giving that perspective. And then I think we have to adjust how we train and what our relationship with our body, our mind, and our training during pregnancy and postpartum so that we are set up to better experience that lifetime of athleticism. That's why these chapters are such a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that with myself. Like I was an athlete during pregnancy and postpartum, but how I was training was just different during different seasons. And what I was doing during my first pregnancy is so different than what I was doing during my second pregnancy. And then I found a whole new sport in my early 30s after I was a mom of two boys, and I fight grown men like
I love
multiple
that.
days a week. Like it's so out of it's so different than anything I could have ever envisioned. But I think it's that confidence that we can build that like my time as an athlete is not done. It might be expressed differently. It might look different than it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago because it should. It should evolve as we evolve. And I really try to like live out the messaging of what my business is, which it's not just about motherhood. It's not just about pregnancy and postpartum and exercise recommendations and what to do or what not to do. It's not just about the coaching element. It's really about that big picture of what these seasons mean on behalf of this lifetime of athleticism. And then having coaches and practitioners who know how to support that, as well as women who really feel informed and supported during those seasons and know that some things are temporary and but nothing is over.
No, it's not. And I think I don't know what book or where we all got the idea that once you become a mother, you kind of have to bury your passion or your past, drive for that, physical goal. I think it changes, right? And it should. It evolves as you get older, like, at some point I used to actually care what I looked like in a bathing suit and what the number was on the scale and making sure that I had the physique that I should have, the age that I'm at, or what I do, right? I think there's a lot of pressure, especially for our industry, for us to look a certain way because obviously we walk the walk, talk the talk, right? But our whole perspective on that and the interpretation of it is different. And so I love that you really emphasize that because it's so easy to get locked into the day-to-day of motherhood. And especially if you're a full-time mom, a stay-at-home mom, and not running a business or having an outlet of sorts, let's say, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that because you just get locked in on the day to day, which I found as I finished out being in commercial real estate when I had my son, who's now going to be 15 next week. And then naturally fell into growing a fitness and nutrition business. I mean, I wasn't planning on it, but I knew that there was something that I needed to grow internally to learn that through my seasons of life. And exactly like you said, each pregnancy was different and your training for it was different, but finding yourself and being able to evolve out of, what you have to work with, and being able to embrace it. And I think that foundation of what you do in your coaching certification is so profound. So talk about your coaching certification and like, who's it really for? And what do you kind of take people through so we can kind of give everyone an idea of what they can look into?
Yeah. So I think typically in the fitness industry, we see a lot of extremes and we see a lot of generic advice. And then you add something like and I say this with air quotes, like a special population, but like pregnancy and postpartum are so common. Like these are a huge number of clients that are going to gyms, people that are participating in fitness are moms or will be moms, or we're, pregnant now, or, postpartum or 5 years postpartum, whatever it might be.
Right.
This is a huge demographic. And I was realizing as I was going through this myself, like I have my master's in coaching, I have my degrees in exercise physiology, I have all the certifications, but there was no specific information on female athletes really beyond menstrual cycle and ACL injuries and body image stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you are part of a generation where actually like I am wanting to keep training into motherhood through pregnancy and postpartum, you're given really generic advice. Don't lift over 20 pounds. Don't get your heart rate over this or that. Or it's like an extreme where it's like, just do whatever. And like, just kind of be a badass. And both ends of that spectrum are really damaging for people when it comes to getting quality information and advice. And I knew as a career strength and conditioning coach that one coach has the ability to impact thousands of athletes, whether it's online or in their local community. To have somebody who's coaching who like gets it and gets that population, has improved messaging, specific advice, understanding of the physiological changes their body's going through, can help support their just shift in identity and their mental health, and can just really get those factors in a way that no one else in the birth community or fitness industry was doing. So I knew that it was really important to educate coaches and practitioners, the medical community, and frankly, anybody who felt compelled to become who they needed. So the people who take my certification are not necessarily, like a lot of them, yes, are coaches, they're physical therapists, they're chiropractors, they're midwives and OBGYNs and whatever else. We have a lot of people who are pre-existing professionals in complementary fields. But I also have a lot of people that come into it and are like, God, I wish I would have known. I want to help people so that no one has to go through what I did. Or I have pelvic organ prolapse. I didn't even know what that was until I became a mom and felt like my vagina was falling out. Or I have diastasis and like, I don't know what that is. And something's wrong with my abs and they feel broken. They feel frustrated. They can't get a straight answer. And like, that's a shitty place to be in when you're already in the trenches of this big life transition, is to like not understand your body and feel like nobody else understands your body either. So I wanted to do something about it. And I knew that we needed to improve the curriculum that coaches were receiving. But I wanted to do it in my own way, on my own terms. So I created a certification course in 2017. We are now on the third edition of it, which will be releasing at the end of April, because evidence has changed, research has changed, my delivery of information has changed. But we have thousands of coaches that are certified through me all over the world, that are running programs in their communities, that are doing personal training, workshops, seminars, online programs. It's honestly just turned into a huge thing that I didn't see coming necessarily, but it's been really cool to see people start businesses with this education, or they've expanded and scaled their business because they now have this additional expertise. Or maybe they're a mom and they're like, this is something I do like 2 hours a week because it's really fulfilling. And like, I make enough money now to be able to like pay for a babysitter here and there so that my husband and I can go out. Like, it's really at all different levels, seeing it play out from practitioners to CrossFit affiliate owners to personal trainers, group fitness, infiltrating group fitness programs. I'm seeing it everywhere. And it's been really cool to see how it's like, it's broad education, applied specifically to this unique population, and then applied differently through the scope of whoever is enrolled in that course, who's ever taking that curriculum. And they're using it in their own ways through their own practice, what they feel called to do. And it's really just helped expand my work, because it's one thing for me to preach to people that are following me on social media, but it's a whole other thing to have this education represented through the lens of other people who've absorbed the curriculum, who understand it, and now they're able to help people that would otherwise never find me or have access to somebody like me.
Can we just rewind for a second when you
So that was a little
said, no,
ranty.
it was great, but I just got like, I just wanted to celebrate you for a second. The fact that you just like slyly moved through, like, I have thousands of people that are certified worldwide. That is so fucking rad, Breed. I'm sorry, but that
Yeah.
is like an amazing accomplishment. And I know that you don't like take that lightly. I know that you worked your ass off to get that, but what an amazing accomplishment,
Yeah.
And so it just it's just evidence to the fact that the pursuing of whatever your passion is, and seeing that there's a void in our industry that is so big.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you nailed it when there's so much misinformation that's given. Actually, Christine, she went through your course. I interviewed her a couple weeks ago, and we both said the very same thing at almost the same time, is that with good intentions, our healthcare teams going through pregnancy, she just had her first, they said, you know what, don't lift anything over 20 pounds. And, Christine was a trainer. She was gym owner. She's like, I was just deadlifting like 150 pounds this morning. So that doesn't really, so it's unfortunate, because those of us that have the knowledge and the background, which I didn't as in-depthly as I do now, with my second two than I did my first two, I didn't have any clue. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay, I shouldn't work out hard because I don't want to harm the baby and my body, so I'll just, ice cream is a better solution, far better
Right.
solution,
Yeah, it's been really crazy to see the evolution of information. And now it's like I've been at this for 8 years, 8 to 9 years of really like being immersed in the doing something about it part, the business, from kind of like a hobby coaching this population to then scaling it online to where it's at today, which is again so different than anything I could have ever imagined back then. But like I've been at this a while, and it's interesting to see like some things are just like just now catching on, or some people are still like, oh, I wish I would have like known. I'm like, well, I've been saying this for a while. We actually have, so you have no idea how much more access to information we have than we did 10 years ago, for example. Or we see like other people see it as like a lucrative opportunity, like, oh, I'm going to get in on that, and like I'm going to start saying this, but really they're just like ripping off shit that I've said, and it's just, or like have created. And it's hard because
Yeah.
now we're seeing like an uptick in interest and acknowledgement, like that, yes, this is a population that deserves better information, um, more support. But there's like also like weird opportunistic things in there too. And that's why I'm just like, hey, quality control. That's what I want to do. Is I want to up the quality control of the industry, of this industry, in the ways that I can control, which is the content I put out there, the curriculum I make available for coaching professionals, and then trustworthy programs for pregnant and postpartum athletes. Like that's what I actually have control of. It's not what everybody else is doing, but the work I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like letting that keep doing the talking for me in a lot of ways. And we see that like I get to work with like incredible professional athletes, and working with them is great. But I also, there needs to be a top down effect, so that it's
Mm-hmm.
not just professional athletes that are getting this kind of specific support, that people that just like want to keep working out through pregnancy and maybe like not pee themselves, or not feel like they're alone postpartum with prolapse, and they're being told they can never lift again or they can never run again, that they have better information than a lot of the limiting beliefs that they've been told by their healthcare team, because it's just not supported by evidence, and that's not what we see. um it's not what we see in real life.
It's true. And I'm going to make sure that in the show notes that folks that are interested in what you do, depending on when they listen to it and if the certification is still open, but I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes if you guys are interested in Bree certification and want to look into it. And also I'm going to have your Instagram handle on there too, because you do share so much valuable information. Like you use examples of your own workouts when you're in your garage working out, talking about the bracing of the core and how it relates to the pelvic, just having that information to even a professional like myself, but even to, the athlete that thinks that they feel like they know their body and their movement patterns pretty well, but just those small little cues can make such a difference. So I really love how you share so openly on your socials, because it makes, like there's a big value piece. And I think people come to socials for that. Even if they haven't warmed up to the idea, like, hey, I really do want to get a better handle on this because I'm in the industry, I want to learn, or I just want to improve my ability for movement patterns, whether I'm going to have more babies or, I'm 10
Yeah,
years
because
postpartum.
like the research and the advice that we're given about exercise and form and Valsalva and like all of these things, it's like that was designed for men.
Mm-hmm.
That was designed for men. So like women have different considerations in a lot of ways. And so it doesn't take away from physical ability at all. It's just like, hey, we have literally different anatomy that we have to account for when it comes to certain expressions of fitness and athleticism. There's nothing that's off limits. It's just some things might need to be done a little bit differently because what we've been taught traditionally and what's been like passed down from one trainer to one trainer, from bro to bro to bro, like
Yeah.
maybe isn't applicable to a woman's body, especially during certain seasons of her life, pregnancy, postpartum, adolescence. Like none of this stuff is exclusive to just pregnancy and postpartum. It's understanding a woman's body throughout her lifetime of athleticism.
Yeah. I literally was just talking to, I have a coaching call that I had before this, and we talked about intermittent fasting, and just to reference the fact that a lot of the information that's done on these type of things relating to workouts but from in my world nutrition based, a lot of these like trends in dieting have been researched on men,
Yeah.
and now have later come to realize that when they wanted to incorporate women into these studies, because oh well, we're just, we don't have women's, we don't have the female approach to it, well then they test menopausal women because they can deliver more static results versus hormonal women. So I mean, like, hormones are my passion, but, from a nutrition perspective, and I know you incorporate a lot of, the movement patterns and the athleticism too, which is very much in tune with understanding how your body works. So I love that you've expanded on that and opened up the eyes to those that are hormonal and have physical changes happening can still tap into things that aren't off limits, but just might look differently in their season of life. And, it's like anything, right? Like sometimes their season of life changes. Like we're not always going to be gunning for a certain look or to be a certain stature in our sport of choice, right? Like the season might change. But speaking of sport of choice, because I just fucking love that you just kick ass on the mats with jiu-jitsu, and you and I have talked a lot offline about that in your competition. So I'd love for you to kind of tell me where you're at with that and what your goals are with it, just personally, just because it's so inspiring, and you're just fucking badass all around, and the fact that you do that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I started jujitsu a few years ago, and I it was something like my husband has done forever, like forever. But I was never really interested in it. I think that my athletic maturity at the time wasn't ready for it. Like my ego wasn't ready to like not be naturally good at something, and it was such a different sport than anything I had ever done or was used to. But I decided to start when my youngest started preschool, and I actually had the capacity. I had like a 2 hour block to make a set class time, right? Like that was it's such a barrier for a lot of moms when you have little ones at home, is to like be able to commit to a set class time, because I didn't have my childcare at that time. So that's when I was able to start. And then like my whole like white belt year, I like trained through like COVID. I also got like my breast implants removed. So there was like a lot of different variables that interrupted my training for a while there. Cause again, I was in California. There was a lot of things that were closed down during that time. But then when I moved to Idaho, I had gotten my blue belt a few months prior. And I knew again, like that if I wanted to get immersed in the community here, I needed to do it in a way that like was going to be healthy for me. And so I got really disciplined with jujitsu. I transferred my studio and I just started like training, and I started training a lot, much more than I was doing in California. So I now do it like, I do it like at least 4 days a week. And a lot of those days I do like double days because I just can right now. That's not sustainable forever because of like my
Yeah.
kids' sports schedules and stuff. But like right now I'm like, all right, technically I can do that like evening class too after my kids are done with their classes because my boys also do jujitsu. So it's like the whole family does it. Um, and it's been really positive for me. When I initially started, I was like, I have no desire to compete. I'm like done with that particular like season in my life because competition for me was always just really toxic. And doing a weight sport where you have to like weigh in and be a certain weight class, like that was also like really hard for me to want to get immersed in again and have to like have that high of attention to detail. And again, the more disciplined I was getting with it here, it has become a huge part of what I do and my routine and my identity. I thought like, what the hell? My kids are going to do this tournament. Why not? Like if I'm going to compete, I may as well do it like when I'm at a blue belt level before I'm at like a higher rank where by that time a lot of those girls are going to have a lot of competition experience. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to try. So I did a tournament with like our whole family did a tournament actually. My husband competed, I did, and then my boys did. And so that was my incentive, was like more of the, all right, I'll at least do one for the experience. But then that kind of ignited the competition side of me where I was like,
Heck
it's
yeah.
good to be in a place to do it healthfully.
Mhm.
And if I can approach competition without it being toxic, without me being like hyper, like competitive with myself or just like really neurotic with my training, with my food, with whatever, if I can do this in a healthy way, I think that's something I want to like trial. I want to experiment a little bit. So then it's like, all right, I got back into like weighing myself again. And at first I couldn't even weigh myself. I was like, I had my husband look at the number and I was like, it just was such a fucked up relationship for me with numbers. It's so dumb, right? Because I'm like, I work
Mhm.
in this industry. Like I talk about this stuff a lot. And I
Totally.
still just had like that stupid thing that I knew would like ruin my day if I like got hyper focused on a number. So, but it was like freaking progressively overloading my like relationship with food and data again. I had to
Mhm.
like just start doing it again, even though I wasn't looking. And then like I'd show Jared, and then like one of the girls I was working with on my team was kind of like helping with that. She's like, all right, so like we're gonna look at like calories and okay, what you're currently eating, girl. You're like for how much you're training, you're not eating enough. And like I know these things, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, we got to eat to train, but my training is so different now than what it was years ago. So it's like almost like the way I was used to eating, I was like okay with, but for what my training volume is now, it was not enough. And so then it was like, all right, now shit, I gotta really monitor this to make sure I am eating to be fueling like on some days 3-ish hours of jujitsu, of like hard training.
Mhm.
Not to mention, like, I still lift weights, I still like to run. I like live a pretty active lifestyle, and just in general, I'm kind of a person who doesn't stop moving. Like, I move a lot, and I'm very antsy pantsy. So, it
There's
just
another one.
became
Good singer.
really, it just became really, like, cognizant of needing to actually look at data. Before, data had been a problem for me because it created more issues and paranoia and under eating and under fueling and um, just kind of sabotaging my relationship with my body. So then I went to the other extreme of this other end of the spectrum of like, I'm not going to look at anything and just like learn to listen to my body, learn to be really intuitive, learn just a lot more like acceptance and just well-rounded healthy habits. And like there's a place for both, right?
Mhm.
So now I'm trying to combine the two a little bit more and experiment to see using jujitsu as a vessel to do that because it feels like it's more justifiable there. Where I'm like, well, I need to be cognizant of my weight because if I'm going to compete, there are weight classes, and so I need to know like where I'm at in that process. Okay, and I also need to know that I'm eating enough to fuel that kind of activity, or if I need to do a little bit of a cut, I have awareness on what that looks like.
Mhm.
So it's been a good in a lot of ways for me, like not just learning a new sport, not just being immersed in the community, but also as like a coach and athlete, being able to examine a new way of going about my own training and my relationship with my body, my relationship with food, my relationship with training in a way that doesn't have to like sabotage me, but I can take the data without taking it personally.
Mm. I
And
love
that's
that.
been a long process. like 8 years, because I was really messed up after my first baby with how I trained and what I was eating, or basically what I wasn't eating. And I knew like that just was not healthy. So then I just stopped all of that. And so now it's like reintroducing it, and but in a way that's like so much more mindful, so much more healthy, and honestly supportive. Like I've talked to you, I've talked to a couple other friends, so that it's like I have really smart people in my life, really smart people that I can like get the validation from, that like, yes, like you're training a lot, you need to eat this much, here's how I was
Hmm.
just going about this, because like that's not my area of interest or expertise. Like I know a lot about a lot, but also like that's not an area I want to be hyper focused on either. So it's
Yeah.
important to me to be able to like talk to others and learn from others and gain some insight and feedback, and again, using jujitsu as the vessel to do that, because it feels a lot more justified versus like, I want to lose 10 pounds, which nothing wrong with that. But also, like, that couldn't be my route to getting involved in my body awareness again.
Yeah.
I needed something else to be my like reason for having that kind of awareness.
And I think that it's such a long process, because a lot of us grew up in the low fat, no fat, we need to be a certain weight. Like that was an expectation, right? Like, especially in the beginning of my training experience and being a fitness instructor, like cardio was the thing that we did because that kept you super lean, right? You didn't really care about muscle. You just wanted to be lean. You wanted to have a low number on the scale. Trying to unwind that, especially in our industry, is really, really difficult still. Not to mention, take that out of even, the um, off the palette of it. People that haven't been exposed to what we have are still going through that, but don't have the support network or the wherewithal to know who to connect to, the right people. Like, you've got such a solid team, obviously your team that you work with professionally for your programming, your certification. Obviously your jiu-jitsu community is a really big hub. And then, you've got us, our little circle of girlfriends that I think are just such a, I mean, today's text thread was just really telling about how supportive we are and can embrace the suck of our lives and what we go through, but having the person to kind of like pull you back, because coaches need coaching, right? Like, how many times have I gone to you about something, or Caitlin, or somebody else in this, in the coaching field, that could like dial things back in and bring it back to perspective. So I think it's so healthy to have those outlets, but also be willing to be humble through the process, to go, I don't know everything. I know a lot. You know a lot, right? But we don't know, like, sometimes when it's with us, we need to, and it's hard to like just
We
coach
need help with
ourselves.
like the micro. Like we can know a
Yes.
lot, like we can know the macro themes of things, but like
Hmm.
to have the kind of input on the micro, like that's what I've needed, especially if I'm going to like go about something in a healthy way. Because again, like we have been exposed to the diet industry, and just it's been so toxic for anybody who is
Hmm.
in their 30s and 40s, frankly any woman in general. It's really toxic, what the misinformation that we've been exposed to. So being able to have somebody like cut the BS with you and help get you
Hmm.
out of your own head, because even like, again, even knowing that I'm like, I probably do need to eat more, it can still be like, oh shit, am I eating too much still though? Or
Hmm.
like on a day where I'm like, I still have like, I am tracking, but I think I have approximately 300 calories left, like that's probably good, like
Yeah.
it's so hard to untrain those thoughts.
Mm.
So like you need a lot of support and insight on like, hey, actually like this is going to help you over time. And so much of body composition or excuse me, like any kind of like weight cut is a time thing versus
Hmm.
like any of these, dramatic things that a lot of us do, intermittent fasting or like cutting a ton of calories really fast or cutting out a whole food group or whatever, like it might be. It helps to have the perspective of like small changes over a lot of time that really adds up.
And I think I've tried to shift my terminology in speaking with women, because a lot of them, come to me because they want to lose weight. And so I try and challenge that. What does that weight mean? And what is the outcome going to result in, right? Instead of thinking body composition. And, it helps when you have an athletic background. So people that you work with that have that athleticism, that experience as a competitor, whether they were in high school sports, college sports, like it's ingrained in your head, right? So being able to understand that your body composition is really such a healthy way to start as far as like what your end goal is, because you can manipulate it any which way you want as long as it's a healthy, there's a root, the root cause of it is very healthy and you want the outcome to be a really healthy one. And it's a season of life. You know, are you going to live in this world of competing and meeting a weight class for, you know, years on end? Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not, but it's a season of life that you now have data to collect. And I love that you reiterated that, because it gives validation. I swear, I just, you know, the scales data, you know, your food scales
Yeah.
data, what you collect and write down as data for your body to know what the hell is working and what's not. And if you've got 300 calories left, but you're fucking starving, like, don't disregard that. Your body's telling you something. And we just are so quick to dismiss it because the diet industry says, well, I should be in a deficit every
Right.
day. Like, no, maybe not. So, I love all that you've accomplished, and I love that this world brought us together. Honestly, Bree, it's been such a gift in our, you know, year of friendship that we've had. Of maybe it's been a little longer. Summertime, it'll be a year because we met at the
Yeah.
pool, at your pool,
Yes.
which has been so good. So, last question I'm going to have you. I always have a guest to kind of give. What would be your biggest piece of advice to a woman that has that athletic background, had played high school sports? Let's say that she was an athlete in high school, hasn't touched a sport, doesn't feel she is that athlete anymore. What would be your biggest recommendation or tip to that person? Doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
mom.
That it doesn't have to be over. That identity doesn't end just because high school ended or just because that sports season ended. That there are endless opportunities to discover new outlets of fitness, of physicality, things that bring you joy that can be an extension of who you still are. And it's worth exploring. It is worth finding, it is worth exploring, and it will make you better in literally every single aspect of your life. And that part of you is not done. It just needs to be rediscovered.
Oh, it sure does. Well, if people want to find you on Instagram, what is the best Instagram handle for them to find you on?
Yeah, my Instagram is at Brianna.battles. That's Brianna.battles. And then the brand page is at pregnant.postpartum.athlete. And then I have my podcast, which is the Practice Brave podcast. And then my website is briannabattles.com. And that has all programs and resources that I have for pregnant postpartum athletes and the coaching professionals and practitioners who want to be certified to work with them.
I love it. I'll make sure that's all in the show notes so people can just click on it. And then also we'll have more information on when you're opening up enrollment for your upcoming third edition. And I've loved watching you do all these iterations. It's been really inspiring too, as a coach, to learn that, you know what, we always can retain and evolve the information, because, you know, there's more coming all the time. So you've been so awesome. Thank you for taking your time, as busy as you are, to come on here and chat with me about everything. So you guys, make sure you go follow Brianna, go listen to her podcast, go follow her on Instagram, check out her website. Again, all that stuff will be in the show notes for you guys to go and stalk her and just find immense value and just relatability in Brianna. So I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys really soon.